whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty.
The atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace has been tense in recent weeks, but what happened just moments ago has left the entire royal household in utter disbelief. According to insiders, Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was seen in tears after a deeply emotional moment involving King Charles. The shocking exit that took place earlier today has set off a wave of speculation, leaving royal watchers stunned and the world desperate for answers. For months, reports have surfaced about the growing strain within the royal family. Between King Charles's ongoing health challenges and Catherine's quiet recovery from her own medical battles, emotions have been running high. But today's turn of events felt different, more personal, more heartbreaking. Sources close to the palace described the moment as quiet but devastating. Witnesses said Catherine appeared visibly shaken, her eyes welling up as King Charles abruptly left a private meeting at Sandringham without a word. The reason behind the king's sudden departure remains unclear, but palace aides are calling it a private family matter. In a family already under immense public pressure, this unexpected emotional breakdown from Catherine marks a turning point. Was it a disagreement, a health-related setback, or something deeper, a clash of priorities between duty and family? As we uncover what really happened behind closed doors, this story reminds us that even royals, bound by tradition and image, are not immune to pain, fear, and human emotion. For weeks, whispers inside the palace hinted that something wasn't quite right. Royal aides described an atmosphere thick with unease, as if everyone could sense a storm building, even though no one dared speak of it aloud. King Charles had been pushing himself relentlessly, determined to fulfill his duties despite his ongoing health challenges. His work ethic remained unshaken, but those close to him noticed moments of visible fatigue, flashes of frustration, and quiet reflection that spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine had been on her own journey of recovery. Following months of reduced appearances and personal healing, she was easing back into her public role with her usual grace. Yet beneath her calm exterior, she carried a quiet concern, not just for the king, but for the weight that duty seemed to be placing on her husband, Prince William. She had always been protective of her family, but lately that protective instinct extended toward Charles himself. In recent weeks, discussions had intensified over future royal responsibilities. Advisors close to the king were eager to accelerate certain transitions, preparing William to shoulder more leadership roles in public life. But Catherine reportedly felt the pace was too fast. She believed both Charles and William were carrying too much, too soon. To her, the monarchy's strength depended not only on appearances, but on the well-being of those who carried its crown. One senior aide revealed that Catherine had tried to speak privately with the king before, urging him to slow down and rest. Her intentions were pure, the aide said. She wasn't challenging him. She was worried, like a daughter would be for her father. Still, the king, ever devoted to his sense of duty, took her concern as unnecessary interference. Then came the day that would change everything. A private meeting at Sandringham meant to discuss upcoming royal engagements. Those in attendance described the atmosphere as polite but tense. Catherine sat beside Prince William, composed yet visibly emotional, while King Charles led the discussion. The meeting began smoothly, focusing on logistics and appearances, but soon turned personal when Catherine raised the subject of his health once more. She reportedly spoke softly, her voice filled with care. "Your Majesty, perhaps it's time to take a brief pause. The nation loves you, but they need you well." The room fell silent. The king, tired and visibly strained, stared at the papers before him for a long moment before replying. "Catherine, the crown doesn't pause. It endures." His words, though calm, carried an unmistakable finality. The tension that followed was palpable. Prince William tried to mediate, but both Catherine and the king remained locked in quiet conflict, one speaking from love, the other from duty. Finally, after several moments of silence, Charles slowly rose from his chair, thanked everyone in the room, and walked out without another word. The doors closed softly behind him, leaving a stunned silence. Catherine's composure broke. Those who saw her described her eyes filling with tears, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to maintain dignity. It wasn't anger that consumed her, but heartbreak. The pain of watching someone she deeply respected walk away in sorrow. William gently placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering reassurance as aides awkwardly avoided eye contact. Outside the window, the gray clouds over Sandringham seemed to mirror the mood inside. For all their power and titles at that moment, they were just a family, bound not by ceremony but by love and worry. When Catherine finally stepped outside a few minutes later, her face carried traces of emotion she could no longer hide. To the world, it might appear as a simple misunderstanding, but to those who witnessed it, this was something deeper, a collision between compassion and pride, duty and care. It was the moment the crown's golden image cracked just enough to reveal the humanity beneath it. The moments that followed King Charles's abrupt exit left the palace in a state of quiet chaos. What had begun as a routine family discussion quickly spiraled into something raw and emotional, the kind of scene rarely witnessed within royal walls. Staff members who had served the monarchy for decades later said they could not recall a time when the tension had felt so personal, so unguarded. Behind the grandeur of titles and ceremony, it was clear that hearts had been bruised. As the doors closed behind the king, a heavy silence settled over the room. Catherine sat still, her eyes lowered, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. Prince William, ever protective, leaned toward her, whispering something meant to soothe. He knew how deeply she cared for his father and how the conversation had come from genuine concern. For Catherine, the emotional moment was not about authority or obligation. It was about family. She had wanted to protect Charles from himself, from the relentless pace he continued to keep despite his fragile health. Meanwhile, King Charles retreated to his private study. Those who saw him described a man visibly shaken, his expression distant and reflective. He had always prided himself on maintaining composure, on never allowing emotion to overshadow responsibility. But that afternoon, for the first time in years, the emotional toll of kingship weighed heavily on him. It wasn't anger, one palace insider said quietly. It was sorrow. The king didn't want his family to see him overwhelmed. In the hours that followed, palace aides worked discreetly to keep the incident contained. No official word was released to the media, but whispers began to circulate among trusted staff. Some blamed exhaustion, others described it as a simple misunderstanding, a moment when love and duty collided in a way neither side could manage. Catherine, deeply affected, withdrew to a quiet room within the residence. Prince William stayed by her side, holding her hand as she tried to steady her emotions. According to one close aide, she was heartbroken that her words had been misunderstood. She never meant to challenge him, the aide explained. She wanted to express care, but sometimes in families, love can sound like disagreement. That evening, as the palace lights dimmed, the couple returned to Kensington Palace. Catherine remained silent during the drive, lost in thought, replaying the moment in her mind. William assured her that his father would understand. That, beneath the emotion, both sides wanted the same thing: peace and stability for the family and the country. But Catherine couldn't shake the image of the king walking away, his shoulders slightly slumped, a rare sight for a man so composed. She later confided to a close friend that the moment felt unbearably human, a reminder that even monarchs can feel fragile when the world demands strength. The following morning, a royal vehicle quietly left Kensington Palace for Sandringham. Without cameras or press, it carried Prince William and Princess Catherine back to see the king. Those close to the family said the visit was private, not for politics, not for protocol, but for healing. They wanted to speak face to face, said a palace source. No titles, no formality, just family. Though details of that conversation remain undisclosed, witnesses noticed subtle changes afterward. The king's schedule was cleared. For the next 2 days, an unusual move for a man known for his structured routine. Palace staff took it as a sign that time was being given for reflection and reconciliation. Behind the gilded gates, the royal family's most important discussions were not about crowns or ceremonies, but about understanding. Catherine's tears, King Charles's silence, and William's steady hand all painted a portrait of a family under pressure, yet still bound by the same emotions that connect ordinary people everywhere. The incident, though private, would soon ripple beyond the palace walls. For the first time in months, the public would get a glimpse into the real struggles behind royal perfection, and it would spark a wave of sympathy unlike anything the monarchy had seen in years. It didn't take long for whispers from within the palace walls to reach the outside world. Within hours, subtle hints began appearing in British tabloids and on social media platforms, suggesting a private emotional exchange had taken place between King Charles and Princess Catherine. At first, the details were vague, just mentions of a tense discussion and Catherine's visible distress. But soon, speculation exploded across the internet. Royal watchers, journalists, and loyal fans of the monarchy flooded timelines with questions. Was there a disagreement about duties? Was it connected to the king's health? Or was something deeper happening behind those carefully guarded palace gates? While the palace remained tight-lipped, the lack of an official statement only fueled the growing curiosity. Major outlets began running headlines within hours. Tears at Sandringham, what really happened between the King and the Princess of Wales? Others took a more emotional approach, describing Catherine's heartbreaking concern for the King's well-being. Though none of the reports confirmed what had truly occurred, one thing was certain. Public sympathy leaned overwhelmingly toward the princess. For years, Catherine had been admired for her composure and calmness under pressure. She rarely allowed emotion to surface in public, always representing strength, grace, and poise. So when word spread that she had broken down in tears, the public saw not weakness, but humanity. It makes her more relatable, one royal commentator explained. People forget how much pressure she lives under. To see her care so deeply for her family reminds us that she's still human beneath the crown. Social media soon became a wave of support. Hashtags like #StayStrongCatherine and Royal Family Healing trended across X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. Thousands of comments poured in from people all around the world expressing love, empathy, and encouragement. She's always been the heart of the royal family, one post read. If she cried, there must be a reason. Another user wrote, Catherine's strength is her compassion, even when it's misunderstood. But the incident also reignited larger discussions about the pressures of royal life. Some commentators argued that the monarchy, though rich in tradition, often demands emotional restraint at the cost of personal well-being. It's a golden cage, said one royal biographer. They live under constant watch, expected to never falter. But this moment showed that even those born or married into royalty can break under the same weight we all feel: love, worry, and exhaustion. As the story gained traction, Buckingham Palace issued a rare and carefully worded statement. It read, "The King and the Princess of Wales share a close and respectful bond. Any reports of discord are unfounded and deeply personal. The family requests privacy during this time." While meant to calm speculation, the statement's brevity had the opposite effect. Fans and critics alike interpreted it as confirmation that something emotional had indeed occurred. Meanwhile, photographers stationed outside the palace noticed subtle but meaningful gestures. A day after the news broke, King Charles's motorcade was seen leaving Buckingham Palace earlier than usual, and later that afternoon, Catherine's car followed a similar route. Though unconfirmed, Many believed the two met privately once again, perhaps for reconciliation. Television programs across Britain devoted entire segments to analyzing body language from recent royal appearances. Clips of Catherine smiling gently at a previous event played on repeat, accompanied by commentary about her strength and devotion. Even newspapers that had previously been critical of the monarchy shifted their tone, praising her for her courage and empathy. For the British public, the image of a princess in tears wasn't a scandal. It was a reflection of authenticity. It reminded them that behind the palace walls and centuries of tradition are individuals struggling, loving, and hurting, just like anyone else. By the end of the week, a shift in sentiment had occurred. The monarchy, often perceived as distant, suddenly felt closer to the people again. Through a single moment of vulnerability, Princess Catherine had unknowingly humanized the royal family in a way no speech or ceremony ever could. In the days that followed the emotional incident, the royal family withdrew from public view. Official events were postponed, schedules quietly rearranged, and the palace gates remained firmly closed to curious onlookers. Behind those walls, however, a far more important chapter was unfolding, one not about duty or ceremony, but about healing and understanding. According to insiders, the turning point came late one evening at Windsor Castle. A small private dinner was arranged, attended only by King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Catherine. No aides, no advisors, just family. The mood, as described by a senior staff member, was calm but charged with emotion. The king entered the room with his usual grace, though his eyes carried the weariness of recent days. Catherine, still tender from the experience, greeted him respectfully, her expression both anxious and sincere. For a brief moment, silence filled the space, an unspoken acknowledgement of everything that had transpired. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Catherine spoke first. She expressed her regret for how the conversation at Sandringham had unfolded, assuring the king that her words came only from a place of love and concern. She admitted that watching him push through exhaustion had been painful and that her emotions had gotten the better of her. King Charles, visibly moved, nodded thoughtfully. According to one witness, his reply was soft but heartfelt. He told her that he understood her intentions completely, though at the time he had been overwhelmed by the weight of both his responsibilities and his health. "You remind me of Diana in your compassion," he reportedly said, his tone breaking slightly. "And that is something I will always be grateful for." Those words, simple yet powerful, broke the tension that had shadowed them for days. William, who had been listening quietly, joined the conversation, expressing his gratitude that the two most important people in his life had finally spoken their hearts openly. What followed was not grand or dramatic, just honest communication, something the royal family often struggles to express publicly. By the end of the evening, laughter had returned to the room. They dined together, reminiscing about lighter moments from past family gatherings, and for the first time in days, the emotional weight lifted. The king even raised a toast, saying softly, "To family, the one crown that never fades." In the days that followed, the world began to see subtle but meaningful signs that peace had been restored. King Charles resumed his public duties, appearing alongside Catherine and William at a charity event in London. Cameras captured the three of them sharing a quiet exchange and a smile, a moment that reassured millions. The headlines quickly shifted from "Royal Rift" to "A United Front," with commentators noting how warmth and authenticity seemed to have replaced the usual stiff formality. Royal insiders later revealed that the king had personally invited Catherine to accompany him on several upcoming engagements, calling it a gesture of gratitude and trust. It was clear that the emotional moment had not divided them, but instead deepened their bond. For Catherine, the experience left her with a renewed sense of perspective. She understood now, more than ever, the emotional toll that came with life in the monarchy, and the importance of compassion, even when misunderstood. For the king, the episode served as a reminder that even those who carry crowns still need care, empathy, and understanding. By the time the royal family appeared together on the balcony weeks later, their unity was undeniable. The crowd cheered, cameras flashed, and beneath the formality of royal waves, there was something real, a shared warmth that no headline could fabricate. For those watching around the world, the message was clear. Behind the grandeur, beyond the duty, this was a family, imperfect, emotional, but held together by love. And for Princess Catherine, those tears shed in quiet sorrow had not been a sign of weakness, but of strength, the kind that turns pain into understanding and reminds even kings that the heart, not the crown, is what truly reigns.